and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA manufacturers top 24 race at Monza. We're riding on board with my qualifying lap. You can see the lap that I've just done there, the 48.8, was actually the best lap I did in this session because I totally misjudged the fuel, which you can see on the bottom of the screen now. There was plenty of time left to do another lap after this one that I'm on now. However, I just misjudged the fuel when I went in the pits and changed the tyres. Totally, I don't know what I was doing, but totally misjudged it. But so at this point I wasn't aware of that, and obviously going for a lap, trying to put a good lap in. You can see going through the first sector, not particularly great, but it's not bad. I still knew that I had potential to do a much better lap because the last two sectors and this middle sector was awful on the 48.8. You see, going off there and losing time still, and you're going to see even with that mistake there going out of the chicane, I still managed to improve the middle sector quite a bit. I think I gained about 3/10. We'll have a little look as we come up to the middle sector. Unfortunately, just not picking up that slipstream of the Renault that's in front of me at the moment. But I was thinking if I could just nail this corner up ahead, I might get a slipstream all the way on the back straight and over the finishing line. It could have been a really good lap. You can see gaining 3/10 there, 2/10 up, so on for about 46.6, even if I didn't hook this last sector up. And unfortunately the rear just went randomly on me. It was such a strange thing. Never happened in practice sessions. It just went loose on me, and that was frustrating because the last sector I could have gone at least 2/10 faster, I think, with the possibility of picking the slipstream up, and it was looking like probably a 48.4 to 5, and that would have put me in the top 4 or 5 positions on the grid. But again, a silly mistake. And the fact that I didn't put enough fuel in meant I couldn't do another lap. I went in the pits, looked at the time, realised I didn't have enough time to actually go in the pits and fuel up. So disappointed. I did have the pace to match Lightning's time there with 48.2. Unfortunately, didn't hook it up. So this was a real disappointment because this was one track where I had potential. You can see force there on 48.498. I think that's pretty much where I think that lap was heading for. If I would have just got that final corner, that final fast chicane sorted. But I obviously lost control of the car and meant I was starting in P8, which wasn't ideal. A standing start at Monza, we all know what happens from a standing start at Monza. I think everyone knows what happens on a racing game, on a standing start at Monza. And then when you add 24 cars into the mix, and cars that start different, especially on GT Sport from a standing start, there's cars that will get amazing starts like the NSX, the Ferrari. They have an ability to start really well. The Nissan GTR struggles, so Lightning from P1 was always going to struggle from the start. I'm not sure about Derek in the Golf. I've never seen that start. But there's such a mixture of the way cars start. I think it's something they need to look at because there's a clear advantage for some cars compared to other cars at the getaway on the lights out. But you know, I feel like this race was a bad decision in starting a standing start anyway. I think everyone in this race agreed on that pretty much. I think the rolling start would have made a lot more sense. Yeah, you would have had a lot of cars going into turn 1 really fast, but for a top 24 race that makes more sense because if it would have been pretty much, you know, a line of cars going into turn 1, it would have been a lot cleaner. I think people would have judged it better than this, what is going to be probably one of the worst starts I've ever been involved with. You know, you judge it by the title, it's a giveaway. The first, I think everyone knows anyway from what was written on Twitter after the race from a lot of people as well. Turn 1 was an absolute disaster in this race, as you're going to see in a second, and it really was not good. I can only imagine how bad, what the commentary was like on the official Gran Turismo page, what they're going to say when they upload this video, because it was really bad. We're going to go through exactly what happened at the end of the race, and I'm going to go into detail who started it. It was actually someone down in right at the back of the grid in P19 that actually caused some of the chaos, although there was already chaos happening. As you see, lights about to go out, I get an okay start. Reactions could have been better, but I got a bit better start than Jomas, and you can see the Ferrari goes through the gap there. I can see a gap ahead of me. I go in it. Jomas tries to shut the door on me, but there's nowhere I could go, and I ended up ricocheting off a few cars. Got the car settled and braked really early. You can see me, Jomas, everyone braking really early except for, it looked like McLaren, and then McLaren hit us again. I think the first contact was McLaren, possibly McLaren outbraking himself, but then at this point you can see I had no acceleration. One issue with the Mercedes is when you drop it down like something like that and you go down really low speed, the clutch kicks in and you can't accelerate. So a disaster start all the way down now in P12. You see forces behind me, a real messy start. It's actually caused by Manson there that was to my left there. He just totally missed his braking point. It wasn't deliberate by him. He just went in too hot, which I think that people should be a bit more cautious on the start of these races. You know, everyone in this race must have known that the start of turn 1 at Monza was going to be a disaster if everyone tries to, you know, fly into the corner. You see myself, Jomas, I think it was Sky Piltman on the right hand side, braked really early. We just lifted off. You could see coasting into the corner, and then we all just got like completely barged into from the cars behind. And I'm going to go through that in detail and show you exactly what happened. And it is a ricochet effect. Pretty much one car hits another car that hits another car, and it's just a constant cycle of that. And I'm going to show you obviously at the end of the race exactly what happened. But now I need to start making some progress in this race. Unfortunately though, when stuff like this happens, I get really annoyed and I start driving annoyed, and I was not in the best of moods after that. Luckily I didn't pick up a penalty somehow, but you can see, looking up the inside here now, trying to stay quite tight to the apex just so I could see the line that I wanted to take through that corner, because I didn't want to get stuck right behind the Scaro and couldn't see any of the braking points. So getting a slipstream now down the straight, picking up a massive slipstream off that high on day in front of me, and decided to pull out and try and make a move. You can see picking up the slipstream and pulling out of that slipstream, going for an overtake, pretty much side by side, going into the braking zone. I'm actually slightly ahead at this point now, going into braking zone. He tries to brake really out on the outside, but just completely turns in and shuts the door on me when I was actually side by side with him. Again, I mean, I don't think it was deliberate, but I would have liked a little bit more space going when I was side by side into that corner. We're going to go through all these incidents at the end of the race and show you exactly why I'm saying this. But unfortunately, again, I went for an overtake and it didn't pass, and I was a little bit wound up at that, to be brutally honest. I expected that he should just stay to the left a bit and give me the inside apex, which I'd earned by putting the car there first, but it wasn't to be. And unfortunately for, I think it was TRL Lightning there, you can see, got completely wiped out by RC Zocchi. RC Zocchi, I think, did the right thing. He actually started slowing down and waiting for Lightning. I think pretty much you're going to see RC Zocchi slowly trying to lose places to give that position back to Lightning. Lightning obviously through no fault of his own. I did see it on the replay, but I haven't included it in this. He did get completely wiped out. But you can see RC Zocchi there waiting for Lightning at that point there. He's going to give that position back to him on this straight, which is nice to see. He clearly knew he had made a mistake and he's going to give that position back. You can see now lifting, pulling over and letting Lightning go through and trying to get back in behind Lightning without giving up any other positions. You see there, give him a little flash there, you see. So nice sportsmanship by RC Zocchi there, but obviously Lightning was probably a little bit annoyed because he's gone from P, I think it was P2 or 3 down to just ahead of myself there in P. I think he's now managed to get himself into P9 or something there because Stefanzi let him back past and then Zocchi let him through. But now this time I'm picking up that slipstream again. I went to pull out but realised I had to get back in that slipstream to pick up a second go of it, and decided to, I'm just going to go for this move after what happened the first. Get the car into the inside again and side by side again, and he shuts the door on me, but this time he loses out, and it was a fair move by myself. I'm going to show you that again at the end of the race and show you why I deserve the space, because I had the car on the inside, I made a nice move, but again he just turned into the corner like I wasn't there. I don't know whether it's a view he used or whether he didn't know I was there, but unfortunately there was contact, but I still managed to make that move and get myself up another position. So now behind RC Zocchi, just trying to save fuel. The problem is now I'm in this midfield battle. I can't drive the way I wanted to. I wanted to drive this quite aggressively. I had done a practice race with TRL Lightning before this, and my pace was pretty much identical to Lightning's. Unfortunately, in that, I think it was lap 13, he managed to get past me, and then I picked up a slipstream and made a mistake going into the braking zone. But we were pretty much identically paced all the way through. So I knew that my pace was good enough in this race if I was driving well. But at this point, I must admit, I was driving a bit scruffy and turned into that corner too early and picked up a 3-second penalty, I think it is, which again, I find these penalties a little bit too strict, purely because you can see on the Delta, I actually lost a little bit of time to Zocchi, but I pick up a 2.5-second penalty, and that's where I think they need to add this strike system in. So on corner cuts, it needs to be like a free warning and then a penalty. I think that's what they do in real life Blancpain and stuff like that, is there's always a warning. As I run wide there, got a massive amount of understeer, and I don't know whether it is dirty air on this game. I didn't think GT Sport simulated dirty air. I didn't think the physics were good enough, but going through that corner then behind Darcy Zocchi, my car just did not want to turn and started going all, steering went all loose and the rear went and everything. So it's possible that this game does simulate some form of dirty air. I've heard a lot of people say that it does. I never thought it did. I wouldn't think that GT's physics would be good enough for that. I've never really thought that they'd be that in depth, but it is a possibility. Who knows? If anyone knows the answer to this, 100% sure, leave it in the comment section, let me know. But I really don't know the answer to it. But it felt like it through that corner. I was now trying to push, obviously, with that 2.5 second penalty, which is frustrating. Like I said, I think they should go with like the Blancpain system. 3 strikes and then a penalty. That's how it should be. 3 warnings. It's like that on a lot of games. I think even iRacing you can get more than that if you do like gradual. If you do a severe cut, it will give you a penalty. But a cut like I did there would be a strike, 1 strike, and in a race of this type of distance, you'd be allowed 17 of them. But then that includes contact as well with other cars. So that's why I like their system. And I think the problem with these races on GT Sport, they're supposed to be a spectacle for other people to see. These races are going on the official channel, and all you see is penalties all over the field from a number of cars. But not much we can do about it. I don't think they're going to change much. They want to try and keep the racing really clean. I can understand that. The limits were very strict at Monza, and this is another point that I really wish they would do. Is they have these separate track limits for these FIA races. One thing I wish that I think they should do, and I hope someone can give this some more to someone who can actually make it happen, is let us have these championship settings for the track limits into our own public lobbies and options races, because we want to practice what we're going to be racing later on in that day, and we can't at the moment. We have to do our practices with the very weaker settings, so we don't get to practice the settings that we're going to be racing in these FIA races. And I think it would be so much beneficial for the racing as a general, for everyone's ability to practice the settings that they're going to be racing. It would make it much cleaner, and that is an idea that I think needs to be thrown out there and put towards someone. As you can see, going into braking zone, I actually braked very early here, but Slen braked really. I tried to avoid him, and I actually that was 100% my fault. I hit Slen, and at this point I actually braked a bit there. I was going to let him go on the inside, and I don't think you realise that, because I wanted to let him go on the inside and then try and hold the outside to stop Force getting through, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But that was 100% my fault. I apologise to Slen. I sent him a message. My error. I totally misjudged. Well, I say misjudged it, but when we're going to have a little look later, I actually braked earlier. I braked before where I should be braking. Normally the braking reference is that bridge with the shadow on the track. I braked well before that, and considering I'd been short shifting into that corner, I expected to stop well in time. But I think Slen braked extremely early as well, because the cars up ahead were battling, which I didn't know, and obviously there was contact. But I apologise, my fault, and I picked up a penalty which is 100% fair. I can't argue with that. 3-second penalty, it was deserved. Fortunately, it didn't really affect Slen too much, and I don't think he picked up a penalty, which was good. He didn't even get a corner cut penalty, but managed to hold the car around the outside then. I knew that Slen would struggle at this track. The NSX wasn't particularly strong here. Managed to do a really nice move around the outside of that final corner there, and just about hold on round the edge and get that position back. So now I can look at getting back into that slipstream of Force and holding on to Force. Obviously my main competitor is Force in that Mercedes, but I've got so much penalties now. 6.5 seconds worth of penalty, and not looking good, to be brutally honest, because we all know if you've got that amount of penalty at the finishing line in these top 24 races, you're going to lose positions when it comes to obviously going over the line. But I decided I've just got to race my own race and just try and keep cool. I wasn't in the best moods at this stage, I'm going to be brutally honest. I was quite angry, driving pretty mad, and not really thinking about keeping it smooth like I should have been. But you can see Force making a move on Sky Piltman there and managing to get through on the outside. A really nice move, and that actually caused Piltman to have an issue coming out of that corner. I decided to go up the inside, got the car on the inside, and he gave me plenty of space. Nice driving by Sky Piltman. Nice to see, give me the space, didn't cut me up, and obviously realised there was no point fighting that too much. I don't think the RCF or the Hyundai, which Stefanti was driving earlier on, was particularly strong in this track, or the NSX. Luckily my AMG was actually really strong here, and it was so frustrating that I was in a position that I couldn't use it, as Rick 918 actually makes a mistake in that Porsche, and that's another position gain. So Force managed to get past him, and then I've managed to get past him as well. So luckily, just hanging on to the back of Force and not letting him disappear too much. Obviously, I didn't want to lose too many positions to Force. I wanted to stay as close as possible in this race. We're now working our way into the final corner. Again, the game looks amazing on these replay cameras with the 24 cars, the GT3 cars. It does look so much, it looks so good, I think. But it's just a shame this race wasn't going my way. It was so frustrating. I can't explain how frustrating it was, because if you would have seen my time trial time, I think it was P3 in the top 10 stars. I had really good pace at this track, and I just didn't. I think because of that start, it affected the way I drove from the start. But you see, having a look on Force, picked up a nice slipstream, decided to back out of that. I was too far back, and just tried to make sure I take this corner nice. But again, I got a real weird oversteer moment as I went through that corner, something that wasn't happening in any of the practice lobbies, and I really don't know what was causing it. I have a theory. It's something to do with what I've noticed is when I've driven a Group 2 car, I've noticed it today actually, driving the Group 2 cars in today's daily race. When you go to Group 3 cars, the steering wheel seems to go funny. Once I'd reset it, I managed to put myself top of the daily race B in the Mercedes AMG. But before that, the rear was just flicking out, and I don't know whether it's something to do with the settings that are used for the GR2 cars. I do know that you might have mentioned, you might have heard me mention a few months ago about the Group 2 cars causes massive issues with my T500. It always has done. It's made the force feedback go weird. It even happens in chat sometimes when I'm in an online lobby, even in Group 3 cars. If I go into a chat whilst obviously driving an online lobby and write a message, then go back to the car, the steering wheel goes completely funny, the force feedback. And I don't know if this was happening in this race. I think that was a little bit of my mistake as well, but I did notice today when I went into from the daily race C to the B, the car was undrivable until I recalibrated the wheel, and then it was fine. So it's something I need to start checking and making sure that I do, even if it's not a case of, you might as well do it just to make sure. And I don't know if anyone else with a T500 has ever experienced these issues, but the force feedback definitely changes with the T500. You have to recalibrate it quite a lot. As we go in the pits, managing to go in the pits with 14% fuel there, 14% fuel. Force went in with 15%, so 1% more than me, which isn't bad. I did use a bit when I obviously made that mistake and tried to get back a bit closer as we go in the pits. Lightning with 15%, so very close in the pits. Zocchi obviously a little bit more in that Dodge Viper. I think it can short shift and maintain a lot more speed down the straight, so managing to do good fuel. He's done really good fuel saving in that Dodge Viper, Zocchi, so that's why he's managed to jump ahead a bit. You see Force just ahead of me, but I've got the Porsche in front of me as I've come out of the pits, and unfortunately I decided, probably was a good decision actually, looking at how close they are behind me. I could have probably put a bit more fuel in, but I tried to underfuel purely because if we remember round 6, when I made that mistake in the pits and I got completely swamped by cars, I decided I'm not going to make that same mistake. I'm going to underfuel my car. You can see how I actually underfuel quite a lot. You can see I've got only, I think, 6.5 laps of fuel left at this point at the start of lap 8, and that shows you that I needed to do a lot of short shifting. So the plan was to just underfuel it, and while I was sat behind the Porsche, I knew that my Mercedes was going to be able to pretty much sit behind that slipstream and do some like drastic fuel saving, and obviously using the mixture to save some fuel. And this now is a chance to try and settle down in this race, because that first stint was pretty chaotic. Everything's spaced out a little bit more now. Luckily I'm still in P10, which isn't a disastrous position. It could have been worse obviously with that start, but I really did want to be in a better position than this. I really wanted to be fighting for a top 5 position in this race, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. So now I've just got to concentrate on trying to save this fuel, because I have put myself in a bit of a situation here now where I'd obviously been doing fuel saving on the first stint, but now for this last stint I've really got to be cautious with the fuel. So you can see a lot of short shifting, and also you'll see using mixture 2 every now and then just to try and save a bit of fuel. You can see the Porsche obviously driving a really good race there. Rick 918 in the Porsche, not particularly strong car here, but I think with that 1% power gain it got, it is a little bit better, like the Mercedes AMG. Although it hasn't really increased the speed down the straights, it seems to have given it a bit better acceleration through second, third, fourth gear, which I think has helped the Mercedes out, especially at short tracks like the Nürburgring, which now at the Mercedes AMG is probably the car I'd pick for the Nürburgring. That's what I've done today's daily race being, and I've managed to do an alright lap. I haven't even pushed it that hard, to be honest. There's a 55.6 in the AMG, I think, at the Nürburgring. That's with the slightly less strict settings on the penalty cuts for that final chicane. In the FIA race, the Nations race, which I'm going to probably do on Wednesday, I've managed the 56.1, I think it is, with the really strict settings on. So the Mercedes is a really nice balanced car. I think now they've got the BOP pretty much right with the Mercedes. It's not particularly great down the straights. It's not amazing through the corners. It's just a nice balanced car that can be competitive at a lot of tracks now. It's not particularly overpowered at any, but it's not underpowered at any, and that's what we want from more of these cars. I think the Porsche is in a similar state. I think they've got the BOP really good with the Porsche, the Nissan GTR, the Mercedes AMG. I think even though the Dodge Viper is really fast down the straights, I think the BOP is fair on that because it struggles a little bit through the corners compared to other cars. So that car's okay. It's just they need to improve some of the other cars. I think, for example, the Peugeot needs a little bit more power. It struggles a bit on the straights, so it is really good through corners, but then they kind of need to lose some of its corner ability but give it a bit more speed. But the Group 3 BOP is definitely coming on. They just need to fix that Ford. The Ford is the one car that I think needs I'd personally bin it out of GR3 until they get it sorted, but they need to do something because that one car is ruining a lot of Group 3 car races. Unfortunately, it looks like Nürburgring is not going to be the case at this track. It doesn't really suit the Ford. It still can be competitive, but in race conditions I can't see that Ford being very good. They just need to maybe BOP that Ford a little bit more, and I think the BOP within Group 3 is very close to being one of the, out of all the classes, one of the best. I think Group 2 pretty much perfect, you can't argue that. Group 4 is a minefield, it's a disaster, as you can see, picking up that slipstream and now doing that fuel saving. You see behind Rick going into mixture 2, settling behind him and just trying to get into a rhythm now of this race, because that first stint there was just no real possibility to get in a rhythm. You can see driving a lot nicer now, not really obviously able to push because I went for the short filling on the fuel rather than driving this last stint aggressive. I decided that was the best way to go. It meant my lap times wouldn't be as fast, but it meant getting away from the traffic, and that's what you really need on GT Sport. That's why qualifying is so important. I think if I would have qualified in top 3, I would have been able to get probably alongside. I think I would have got ahead of TRL Lightning, to be brutally honest, after the practices I was doing with him. The AMG started so much better than that Nissan GTR. It was so horrible, that GTR at the start. So I think if I would have got a top 3 or 4 position, I could have been looking at going into that first corner pretty much dead level with P1. But then with that disaster start, who knows what would have happened. Could have ended up down in P20 for anyone knows, or it could have been in P2. It's just a random, that's why I really wish they would have done a rolling start for this race. It would have made more sense, but they didn't do it, and no one can really, you can't be changed now. What's happened has happened, and I've just got to really concentrate on the last final top 24 race now. As you can see, picking up that slipstream off Rick 918, and decided, I think this is the point where I decided to get rid of some of the penalty there. Tried to see what would happen if I got rid of some penalty, how fast it would go down, and only lost about 0.8 of a second, so it didn't really benefit me at all. So I slightly lost the slipstream from Rick doing that, but I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be an issue because the Mercedes was a bit stronger down the straight, so I knew I'd be able to pick that slipstream straight back up from the Porsche. And obviously I'd done really good fuel saving up to this point, so I knew that if I needed to use a bit more fuel to get back in that slipstream, I could do that and then just do a bit more fuel saving again. So no real issues. We go through the chicane, and now I'm starting to get in a rhythm now of that chicane, and driving it much better. You can see driving smoother, and considering I'm doing massive fuel saving, I'm managing to hold off Jomas behind there. He's not in the slipstream. Obviously I nearly gave him the slipstream by lifting off, trying to get rid of that penalty, but I judged it quite well. He got to about 1.3 seconds, but not close enough to pick up the slipstream, and now I can drive a bit more aggressive and try and pick up that slipstream from Rick, now that I know that trying to lose the penalty there is pretty much pointless. It wasn't going to work. Obviously I was just worried about 9 seconds of a penalty, and look how many cars, you've got 2 free cars right behind me, so I was expecting to lose a lot of positions in this race as we go over obviously the finishing line. But you see, picking up the slipstream now, getting much closer to Rick, and decided that I was going to make a move at some point because I felt like I had more pace, even though I've done obviously the fuel saving and I need to do more fuel saving. I've done quite a bit of fuel saving at this point, and felt that the point was coming where I need to start thinking about getting past Rick, and then giving myself, trying to get some sort of gap to cars behind. As you see, we ride on board now, and you're going to see revving out a little bit more, not fully, just pretty much to the limit there. You could have revved it a bit more, but picking up a nice slipstream, getting some good speed, nearly 171 miles per hour, and that's much more than the Porsche can do. So hold the inside line and look at the difference between that and the other overtake early. Rick gives me plenty of space on the inside. That's what you expect when you're on the inside of someone going into the turn 1 at Monza. They hold that outside line and then cut back behind you and try and get a good exit from the second part of the chicane, but that's not what happened earlier, and that's the difference between when someone gives you the space and someone doesn't. Really good driving by Rick, and luckily now I can just push on. I think Rick probably thought that was the best option to do also, because I think he also did similar to me in the pits with the underfuel, and probably realised for his race now it might be better for him to sit behind my slipstream and use obviously the power, the extra power the Mercedes has got, to help him keep some sort of straight line speed. So might have been very clever driving there by Rick. As you can see now, 3.5 seconds behind Force, and this is just now a case of short shifting and just trying to keep similar pace to Force, because there's no way I'm going to gain over 2.5 laps that amount of time. And I think Force obviously doing short shifting as well. He only went in the pits with a little bit more than me, but obviously when I was stuck behind Rick for the first few laps and doing massive short shifting, that's when I've lost a bit of time. But Force drove really well. Obviously I think both myself and Force would have had a really good chance of a top 5 in this race. It wasn't to be, and you can't really, I mean, I would love to redo this race knowing what would have happened on that corner, but you can't do stuff like that. All I've got to do now is really concentrate on that final race. It's going to be so important, as it's pretty much going to be a battle down now, head to head between myself and Force. You can see he's now 1 place ahead of me. We've got 2 laps to go in this race. Unfortunately, I've got a massive amount of penalty to get rid of, and you can see that Porsche behind me not able to really make a move. It's not fast enough down the straight. I think he's doing fuel saving, so what he's doing now is trying to make sure he can get to the end and using the slipstream from my Mercedes. You can see I'm able to rev it out a little bit more. I've managed to do a reasonably good job with the fuel. I've got it to a point where I can put a little bit more revs in, but at no point in this race have I really been able to drive aggressive because of the way it's gone. But into P9, from where it was after lap 1, it's not a terrible position. I've managed to recover some positions, done some nice overtakes, and got back into the top 10, but I'm going to lose that when we get to the finishing line, obviously, with the massive amount of penalty that I've got to get rid of. 9 seconds. Luckily on this game, the penalty does decrease fast, as I made a little error and then nearly went wide on that corner, but somehow just kept the power down there because I didn't want to lose a position, and only lost about, I think it was 2 tenths to Force. It was down to 3.2 seconds and it's nearly up to 3.4, so I think it was actually down to about 3.1, so lost about a tenth or 2 to Force with that little error, but nothing massive. Got away with that a big time, and that could have been a disaster, even a spin, and that would have been a real disaster, because even though if I can pick up P11 and it's just over 2,000 points, it might give me a slight boost in the championship, and that's what my concentration was on now, is just trying to get to that finishing line in the highest position possible to see if I can, 100 points could be massive after the final round in this in the top 24 race. After that top final race, 100 points extra could be the difference between myself getting to the World Finals and Force getting to the World Finals. So I've got to try and get every point possible now and drive to this final lap as clean as I can and as well as I can. You see the fuel pretty much alright now. I've managed to get it over 1, but you can see that the fuel saving I've done, one lap of fuel is basing that on about 12-13% of fuel, but when you're driving a little bit more aggressive, it reduces about 15-16% this Mercedes. So I've still got to drive reasonably calm to the end. You can see keeping the short shifting going. One thing that has helped the Mercedes AMG GT3 is that 1% powers give the ability to short shift it and still keep okay straight line speed. That's where it's helped out a bit, so hopefully that will help me out at the final race at Interlagos also. As we go through to the final corners now, it's all settled down in this race now. You can see it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot smoother, it's a lot more spread out, and that's what happens when obviously after the pit stop phase the cars get spread out and it all just calms down a bit. As now going into the last few corners, you can see behind me it looks like the Nissan GTR driven by the Oscara driver is going to put Rick under pressure. He's going to make the move on the inside. You see it there in the mirror. He's gone for that move. You can see it on the top right hand corner also, and he's managed to get through. So now I tried to really hook this corner up just so he wouldn't pick a slipstream off myself, because I wanted to come to the finishing line pretty much knowing that without the penalties that I would have a P9. I know that you don't actually get the P9, but it's kind of like a mental thing really. You want to make sure that in your head you know that really you had the ability to get a P9. But Force obviously going to get that P9. He's got less penalties. He's going to have to get rid of some on the finishing line. You can see they're getting rid of them fairly quickly, and now I've got to get rid of mine very early. You can see starting to get rid of them, and just before the finishing line I nearly got rid of it all, but literally a tenth of it got not gone, and still got a 1 second penalty then, but just about managed to finish ahead of Jomas. So not a terrible position. It race should have been much. I really should have had more points than what I got. I come away with, I think it was 2,200 points, but that does actually boost me up by about 150 points in the championship. So, but Force I think got quite a big score again. He's really picked up the points in these top 24 races. Now this was the start. We're going to go through the highlights now. I got an okay start. The Ferrari got amazing. So you can see I got pinched in between both, ricocheted off both. We all managed to calm down a bit there. And then at this point we broke early. You can see us three all breaking the line very early, and then we get whacked from behind. You can see cars hitting me, and that was pretty much a disaster start. You're going to see what caused that in a second. And then at that point there I couldn't accelerate, which was really frustrating because the car engages the clutch on the AMG. I don't know if it does on other cars, but in that situation the clutch goes in and you can't accelerate, it just revs. And I just couldn't go anywhere. And without that happening, I would have been able to get myself, I think, ahead of all this train of cars, and the race would have been a lot different for me. But unfortunately for myself, it engaged the clutch and I couldn't do anything about it. And then obviously Oscara Stefanzi tries to hold the outside line there, manages to keep that position. Quite good driving by him there. Can't really complain about that. So we'll have a little look now at that start, looking back at the other cars, and you're going to see the Ferrari, the amazing start that I was talking about, and then Jomas, I don't think he realised, as I say, he started to squeeze me a bit, but then it was just a ricochet effect. But now at this point we all brake really early, but look at the cars behind, and it's all just compacted and cars going into each other, and it's messy. It's not good to see. And I'm gonna go back and show you exactly what happened. You see how I couldn't accelerate there? That was really frustrating, because without that I could have probably got going again. But this was the cause. Oscar Manson, it was 100% not deliberate. He's just misjudged his braking. He's gone in way too deep. Just look at the difference in braking there between I think P18 and Manson, and he hits Rick now at this point because Rick's braked early, very sensible drive, and he whacks Rick really hard, and Rick then gets ricocheted into Jay Adams. Now at this point he's trying to avoid him. Watch, he tries to turn left to go through that gap, which was really clever driving by Rick 918, quick thinking, but he just couldn't do it in time, and he hits Jay Adams there. And then Jay Adams then ricochets into M. Thomas, who then ricochets into McLaren, who then McLaren I think McLaren had already hit someone, but then hits me after that, and then I've got nowhere to go. You see M. Thomas whacks McLaren, who then whacks me, and then I'm just pretty much a passenger as my car goes straight on. It was so messy, and it's not good to see, because we all know we have to brake early at turn 1 at Monza, and some people obviously got a little bit hot-headed and went in a bit too strong. But look how much he hit him here at this point. You're going to see at this view. Completely whacked him, and then that's where Jay Adams got hit. And then we're going to ride on board. You see Jay Adams get hit, goes into M. Thomas. M. Thomas then, as we go on to M. Thomas, hits McLaren, and it's just a complete ricochet effect all the way through the grid. And you see this is where the big impact on McLaren happens, and then McLaren goes straight into the back of my Mercedes. You can see it there just ahead of him, straight into the back. And if only I was on the inside more at this point, I would have come away without getting hit there. But unfortunately, nothing I could do. You can see McLaren hits me, and then I'm just a passenger at this point because my car's going straight after being hit by McLaren, and then straight into Force. Nothing we can do. And also Lightning had already been hit, I think, by McLaren hitting another car at that point. And a messy start. And this is another point. If they're going to have these races, they need to get rid of their bollards, because they got knocked onto the track and they don't get removed. So why they're even on the track, take them away. You've got the track limit strict anyway. So we're going to have a little look at this move that I made lap 2. You can see at this point I'm dead level. I'm ahead now at that point. He tries to brake really late and go around the outside and just turns in on me. At that point he needs to really give me more space. was a little bit frustrating, but he kind of wanted to hold the outside line, but he needs to give me space on the apex because I had earned the right to that. So then we go to the next move where I thought I'm having that position whether he likes it or not. I braked really late. At this point I did a double brake thing where I lift off the brakes and then brake really late. You can see he moved over, he went defensive really late. And now I decided to just keep on the brakes, really trail braking all the way into the corner. And it was really good braking by myself. You can see got myself dead level, staying on the inside, giving Oscaro plenty of space. But again, watch what happens. As we're going into this corner, pretty much dead level, he just carries on turning in pretty much how he did before. He doesn't go for that wide line like Rick does, and it's just giving me no space. You know, I've got that inside line, I've earned the right to that corner, and he didn't give me the space. But I don't think it was malicious. I just think it was, obviously, everyone was being very hot-headed after the start, and didn't want to give up places, obviously. So no hard feelings with that. I managed to get through anyway, and now we're going to have a little look at my mistake hitting Oscar said. Terrible mistake. That was not much. It was my fault, but I did brake early. It's just that they braked a little bit earlier than what I did. And you're going to see at this point, I'm going to show you as we have a little look now, is I actually tried to brake to let Oscar back through a bit, and then I tuck him behind him. But look how early I was on. I was on the brakes at this point, which is well before the brake. The shadow on the track is your brake marker. So I was on the brakes really early at this point, and it just they must have just been on the brakes really, really early, and there's not much you can do when cars are braking that early. Because look, I'm braking so early at this point. I'm trying to reduce it. At this point, it doesn't look like there's an issue, and you can see I'm just braking normally. I'm not gaining massively on Slem, but I think he really slows down just past the 50 because they're obviously battling up a front ahead of him, and he can see that. So he brakes really hard at this point, and once I realised I could see that he had braked really hard, I tried to turn it about now, I think it was, start to turn left because I can see there's going to be a collision, try and avoid him, but unfortunately the right front part of my car hits the rear of him and it knocks him off slightly. But luckily it didn't really lose him too much time, and he didn't get a penalty, I don't think. But I obviously did get a penalty, but that was a just penalty. I can't complain at that. You can see they're pushing him off, and he goes wide. But then we're going to have a little look now. You're going to see my brake lights come on at about this point there, because I was trying to let him go a bit, and then I was going to tuck back in. I was just trying to give him the inside, but I wanted to keep some speed to stop Force, who was coming up behind me. But he moved over, obviously a bit annoyed, and I think that was a little bit of a shove to say, you know, a bit annoyed. I would have probably done the same, but I was just trying to obviously make sure that Force didn't get past, but unfortunately I lost the position anyway. But then this was a move pretty much after that, got the position back. You can see his teammate, the other Oscar driver, tried to bump him down the straight to give him the boost, which didn't work, so I just chucked it around the outside, gave him space on the inside and tried to hang it around the outside. You can see now it's good that Slane gave me the respect then on the outside. He didn't run me wide, clean driving all the way around the outside, and managed to get that position back. You can see there, got in front, and that was a nice move. I enjoyed that one, and that was probably one of the nicest moves I made in the race. And then I had to go a bit defensive as Hugo went to go up the inside. I go defensive, managed to hold that off and keep that position. So then we go through to lap 6 when Sky Piltman obviously got overtook by Force and then got compromised on the exit. I go down the inside, and again, good driving by Oscar Sky Piltman. He gives me space on the inside, doesn't shut the door, he sees I've got the inside, and nice driving by him, and another clean overtake to put me up into P10 in this race. And as we come out the second Lesmo, you can see Rick 918 makes a mistake, goes onto the gravel, and then that loses him the speed down the straight. So I took him behind just for a brief little bit of slipstream, go back to the right hand side and managed to get myself up into P9. So some moves in that first stint. This is the final move on Rick when I decided to use a bit of fuel and get myself past him. You can see there on the inside. Now look at the difference here now. Look how much space he gives me on the inside, because he knows that position's mine, and that's kind of what I expected to happen when I was on the inside of Stefanski, but obviously he wanted to fight that position a bit more. But a fun race in terms of to watch it, but the start really wasn't good enough. I think people need to be a bit more cautious going into that turn 1 on the brakes. You can see it, myself, Jomas and Sky Piltman very early on the brakes. I think everyone in front of us was reasonably. I think McLaren went a little bit late and knocked into someone, and then he obviously got hit again because of Oscar Manson, who braked really late, and the ricochet effect that I've shown you obviously knocked McLaren then into myself, so that wasn't his fault. That wasn't McLaren's fault at that point. That was just the ricochet effect. But let's hope the final top 24 race is a little bit cleaner. I don't know if it's going to be a standing start or a rolling start. I'm kind of hoping it's a rolling start, because Interlagos rolling start is normally not too bad. It's normally fairly easy to get through turn 1. I think a standing start could be a little bit nasty. I don't know. Let's just see what happens. But anyway, still a fun race, entertaining. Very disappointed with my points, because that was an opportunity for me to pick up a top 3 or 4 in that race. I had the speed. I just got a little bit too wound up with the start and everything that happened, and just didn't really settle into any sort of rhythm. But let's hope that the final top 24 race goes my way. It's pretty much head to head now with Force. We're on pretty much identical points. So it's going to literally be a battle between myself and him who gets to the World Finals. I really hope I can do it for everyone on the channel, so I can obviously give some content from that and record some of the stuff from the World Finals, and obviously show everyone what happened and give some people some insight into these events. It'd be great if I can make it. I've obviously registered already. I've had the email. I've registered. It's just a case of waiting for that final race and doing the best I can. As long as I do the best I can in that final race, then I'll be happy. If I don't perform like I did in this Monza race, then I'll be a bit disappointed. So let's just hope it all goes well in that top 24 race, and I can make it to that World Finals. It'd be amazing to be there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. We're going to be back with more GT Sport videos very soon. I'm going to try and do the Red Bull race hopefully at some point, although the track limits are a bit suspect, but everyone's abusing that turn 1, so I did on my qualifying lap also. But I might also do the sprint race at Nürburgring for a bit of practice for Wednesday's Nations race also. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be back with more very soon. Thanks again for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you leave any questions in the comment section, and make sure you hit that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks again for watching, everyone.